Hello and welcome to more bonus content from our October 19th, 2022 Reserve Studies Q&A webinar. We had so many questions submitted that we had far more than we could answer in the time of the webinar. So I'm recording some extra bonus content sessions here so you can get the answers to all the questions that were submitted. I'm going to take a few minutes here to answer looking at it now, I guess the I's, insurance, investment, and inflation questions. So getting right to it. Some of our reserve funds are in an investment account that has lost significant value in the current market, so our balance is significantly below the target for this year. What do you recommend? Well, the first rule for investments is protection of principal, POP. So first thing to do is change your investment a vehicle at this time, get into something that is safe, that protects your investment. And then because of your loss of funds, you're going to have to update your reserve study. What has happened is as if you had an unauthorized expense or an unplanned expense, and your reserve fund is going to be a lot lower than you expected. So your reserve funding requirements are likely going to be higher in the near future. So that'll be likely two things you need to do. Change your investment strategy. Protection is number one. Returns are only number two. And then update your reserve study to accommodate or acknowledge the very different starting reserve balance. Next, should any part of the reserve funds be just left in bank savings, or should a portion be invested in CDs? Well, you're talking about two different things here. You do need liquid cash when you have projects that are happening. If you are going to get the fence painted and you need 20 grand, by all means make sure you have at least 20 grand in your bank savings account that you can transfer to operating so you can write a check to the painting company. Money that you don't expect to use for a longer period of time, you can set aside in a higher interest earning vehicle. Whether it's a CD or other things, talk to your investment counselor. But when you don't need the cash, you can put it in time-dependent investments that yield higher returns. For the next 12 months, what percentage cost are you proposing for construction cost increases? And what investment rates are you proposing to use in your analysis? Interesting question. Let me make it very clear. Interest will never offset inflation. You only have so much cash in the bank, and that's what you earn interest on. And not only is it a lower amount than the entire value of all your reserve projects, and it's that large entire value of all your reserve projects that grows with inflation. So the smaller level of interest on a smaller dollar value is always going to be less. It's never going to keep up. So you got to get away from really comparing the two. But in answering the question, we are seeing year-over-year increases in the 10 to 20% range, actually 5 to 20% range, depends on the component. Every time we do an update, we update the prices custom to each component. They are behaving differently. So expect your reserve expenses to be up significantly in the reserve study you get from us. And then we discuss the investment return with our clients to find out what they are doing. Are they, does their money sit in a bank savings account, or do they have something, let me use the words, more sophisticated, that gets them significantly more interest, again, while protecting principal. And so we want to try to model that. But generally, it's in the 1% range. For the long-term picture, we are projecting 10, 20, 30 years into the future using inflation values in the order of 3%. We expect current inflation to not last for very much longer. If a component needs repair but is not in terrible condition, is it prudent for the HOA to wait for an event like a hailstorm and file an insurance claim to get the repair done? Interesting question. They're putting themselves in the situation of wishing for bad news. It sounds to me like when you're unhappy with your car, parking it dangerously close to a dangerous intersection. But no, your job as a board member is to provide for the needs of the association. No waiting, no gambling, no risking. Yeah, that's just the first part of the answer. Plan to get it done on time, get the cash there. If you have bad news, then you can deal with insurance. Or is this approach likely to be rejected by the claims adjuster? For instance, they might pay only for 50% of the HOA's reshingling project because they assert the shingles were already badly degraded before the hailstorm. That's very true. I think Florida now has a law that says the insurers are not responsible to pay full replacement value if the roof is over 10 years old or something like that. It's just like if your car is totaled, you get the current value of the car, not the brand new value of the car. Obviously, I favor a proactive maintenance approach and good reserve budgeting, but I'm no expert, and maybe the insurance company is commonly used. No, the insurance company is not commonly used. Budget for replacement, get your projects done in a timely manner, control it, don't wait for accidents. Insurance is for accidents, not for normal deterioration. Okay, on to inflation questions. What inflation rate do we use for future years? Interesting. You can do whatever you want. When you hire a credentialed reserve study provider, you're going to find that we balance current costs against future costs. So I think I said it a moment ago, we are adjusting all the costs in the reserve study to current costs. That's a significant increase over last year, but those are now current costs. We might even give costs that we expect to occur next year or the year after an additional boost just to try to get them ready, because for the long term, we expect that the best predictor of the future is the past. So if we look 10, 20, 30 years back, inflation has been somewhat in the 3% range. So that's what we're using for future projections. So our inflation estimates in the reserve study will be 3%, although we have brought all costs up to current, and we may even give the costs for next year a little extra nudge so they get a little bit of a boost in addition to the default 3%. Okay, our annual reserve study provides a 30-year forecast of upcoming projects. What inflation rate is applied to update the numbers? Same answer, about 3%. That's what has been stable in the U.S., and that's what we expect to settle in for the longer term in the future. There's going to be times of high inflation. There's going to be times of low inflation, but we're creating a plan. It's a one-year plan based on 30 years of looking forward, and that is best handled by acknowledging kind of the reality of what is going to be the average inflation over the next 30 years. Okay, how should we be accounting for inflation, monthly versus annually, in our regular roll forward of the reserve analysis? For example, our prior year reserve fund level was 27.5% at year end, September 30th. But once we rolled forward the analysis, increase in current prices for inflation, our reserve level dropped to 25%. I'm not sure if they're talking about percent funded or their percent of total assessments, but it sounds like their numbers are dropping with inflation, and the answer is yes, inflation is real. Your funding needs to keep up. When the costs go up, your funding needs to go up. So update your reserve study. It's even more important to do that on a more frequent basis. If you have been updating your reserve study every 5 years, accelerate it. If you've been updating your reserve study every 3 years, accelerate it. The last 3 years have been very bumpy with costs. And to be on track, you want to make sure you're using a good plan. And that good plan is an updated plan with current costs. Okay, our reserve study as of 12/31/21, so 10, 11 months ago, recommended a 2% increase in funding in 2023 over 2022. Okay, fine. However, that was based on 3% inflation, and we all know that inflation is now significantly higher. Correct. Assuming all other assumption estimates in the reserve report remain the same, what range increase in 2023 from 2022 would you recommend? It sounds like someone doing it themselves. Let me put in a plug for our online reserve calculator, UPlanet. This is exactly what that tool is for, so you can try and see what's going on. When you have current costs, you can see basically a reserve study is just balancing the income versus expenses. It's not a lot more complicated than that. So when the income versus expenses. So when the expenses go up, income needs to go up. So see what it does, and what we see is that since the costs are going up 5, 10, 15, 20%, depends on how long it's been since we touched that number. If it was last year, it's going to be a lower increase. If it was 3 years ago, it's a much larger increase. So our recommendations for 2023 at this time are higher by a significant amount, sometimes single digits, many times double digits, many times in excess of 10%. And that's just the way it is. Like I said, it's balancing income versus expenses. So get your reserve study updated. UPlanet is a great little tool. If you don't have a current reserve study, then it's $149 per year. You can see more about it on our website. But my encouragement for you is to not just, it's one thing to get free advice from a webinar. That's great. That's a good start. But when you're talking about thousands of dollars and the properties and being responsible for the home value of all the owners, that's time to get an updated reserve study. So reach out, get some good numbers, and point your association in the right direction. Okay, that concludes what I have for this little bonus content. We have other videos with bonus content, general questions, components, funding plan, legislation, and miscellaneous. So make sure you see those. We're here to help you have success at your association. And that's why we do this for you. Best wishes to you. Let us know how we can help.